I still remember the sound first. Not what I saw, not the words, not even my own heartbeat trying to punch its way out of my chest. It was the sound of my bedroom door hitting the wall hard enough to rattle the framed beach photo hanging above my dresser. That cheap little frame had been crooked for months, and for some reason, that was the first thing I noticed when the door flew open. It tilted even more to the left, and then everything else in my life did too. I was 19, home for my first year of community college for the summer, living in the split-level house in a suburb outside Columbus where my mom had moved us after she married Rick. He wasn't my father. My father had vanished into one of those half-real, half-invented stories men tell when they want credit for loving you without doing any of the work. Rick came into our lives when I was 15, all polished boots, clean truck, easy grin, and this steady way of talking like nothing in the world could surprise him. My mom fell for him fast. I didn't. But over time, I stopped fighting him. He paid bills on time, fixed things before they broke, and never tried too hard with me, which weirdly made it easier to trust him. He became this solid presence in the house, like the hum of the fridge or the porch light always left on after dark. Not warm exactly, but dependable. By 19, I had a boyfriend named Tyler and a life that looked, from the outside, pretty normal. Tyler was 22, worked at a Chevy dealership, wore baseball caps backward like he was still 17, and had that kind of confidence people mistake for charm until they get close enough to smell the ego under it. When I first met him, I thought he was fun. He showed up with cold beer, loud laughter, spontaneous plans, and stories that always made him look like the main character. He could be sweet too, in sharp little flashes that kept me hooked longer than I should have been. He'd kiss my forehead while I was half asleep, fill my gas tank without asking, text me things like "miss you already," even if he'd left 10 minutes earlier. The problem was those moments were always followed by something else. A lie, a disappearing act, a mood swing, a comment that made me feel stupid and grateful for him at the same time. I knew even then that something was off. I just didn't know how deep it went. That summer was brutally humid, the kind where your t-shirt sticks to your back before noon and the air in the garage feels like a hairdryer blowing in your face. My mom worked long shifts at a dental office, and Rick was usually at a job site till late afternoon. Tyler started coming over during the day because he said he liked seeing me when the house was empty. I told myself it was romantic, private, adult. The truth was, he liked being wherever he could have my full attention without interruption. He'd stretch out on my bed with his boots off, scrolling his phone while I folded laundry or painting my toenails, and every once in a while he'd pull me into him like I was a commercial break he planned into his day. The first crack came in June. I was sitting cross-legged on my floor, trying to finish a summer reading assignment I'd already ignored for 2 weeks, when Tyler got a text and flipped his phone face down so fast it almost looked rehearsed. I laughed and asked who died. He didn't laugh back. He said, "Nobody. Why are you always looking at my phone?" I hadn't been. I was 3 feet away. But that's how it started, with this weird aggression that only made sense if he had something to hide. I let it go that day because I wanted peace more than truth. I did that a lot back then. A week later, I borrowed his hoodie because the grocery store was freezing and found a long blonde hair stuck inside the collar. I'm brunette. My hair barely touched my shoulders at the time. This one was almost silver blonde, the kind of color people pay real money to get in salons. He told me it belonged to his cousin Ashley, who rode in his truck once after a family barbecue. He said it so smoothly, with this exhausted little smile, like I was embarrassing myself by even asking. I apologized. That's the part that still makes me sick. I apologized for noticing evidence. My mom didn't like him. She never came right out and said it, but she had this tone whenever his name came up. Tyler again, or he's here early, or does he ever work? And I'd get defensive because when you're in love with someone toxic, defending them starts to feel like defending your own judgment. Rick almost never commented. He'd just look at Tyler sometimes with this unreadable expression, like he was taking measurements. Rick and I had a complicated piece. He wasn't affectionate, we didn't have heart-to-hearts, but he paid attention in this quiet, unnerving way. He noticed if my tires looked low. He noticed if I came home with red eyes. He noticed when Tyler started showing up too often and staying too late. One evening we were both in the kitchen, me digging through the freezer for pizza rolls, him standing at the counter with a beer, and he said without looking at me, "That guy talks like a man who's always got an exit plan." I remember going cold all over. "What does that even mean?" I asked. He took a sip and shrugged. "Means he never says anything straight. Men who mean what they say usually say it plain." I rolled my eyes because I was defensive and 19 and didn't want anyone, especially him, making me feel naive. But the truth was it got under my skin because I knew exactly what he meant. Tyler could talk for an hour and never answer a direct question. He always had a joke, a distraction, a kiss, or an accusation ready before the truth had a chance to land. In July, things got worse. Tyler started canceling plans last minute, then showing up at my house after midnight wanting to be let in through the side door because I just needed to see you. He'd disappear for half a day, then flood my phone with texts about how much he loved me. He borrowed money twice and forgot to pay me back both times. I caught him lying about where he'd been, and he turned it into a fight about trust. He said I was insecure, dramatic, too intense. Then he'd hold me while I cried like I was the one hurting us. There was another girl, obviously. I knew it in the animal part of my body before I admitted it in words. But knowing isn't the same as being ready to leave. Sometimes you stay because the pain is familiar. Sometimes you stay because leaving means facing how much of yourself you handed over to someone who never deserved it. The day everything cracked open started weirdly normal.
It was a Friday in late July. My mom had gone in early for inventory, and Rick had left around 7 to supervise a roofing crew across town. Tyler texted me around 10 asking if he could come over. I should have said no because we'd fought the night before. Instead, I said sure. That alone tells you who I was then. He showed up in gym shorts, sunglasses, and that lazy grin that could still mess with my head. He kissed me like nothing had happened, like he hadn't ignored me for 6 hours after I asked why he was tagged in a bar photo by some girl named Kelsey. He acted hungry, so I made sandwiches. We ate in my room with the TV on low. Around noon, he got a call, looked at the screen, and went out to the hallway to answer it. Not the porch, not outside.
The hallway, where he thought I couldn't hear him clearly, but still close enough to keep an eye on me. That was Tyler all over, secretive and controlling in the same breath. I caught pieces. No, I said later. I'm with her right now. Don't start. The sandwich in my hand turned to pace. When he came back in, I asked who it was. He didn't hesitate. My manager. Then he smiled. You gonna interrogate me all day? I stared at him. Your manager says don't start? His whole face changed, just like that. The warmth dropped out. He laughed once, sharp and humorless. You were listening? You were in the hall. You always do this, he said, standing up. You create drama because you're bored. I stood too. I'm not creating anything. You're lying. He moved closer, not enough to touch me, just enough to crowd the air. You want the truth? The truth is you're exhausting. That word hit me like a slap. Exhausting. Not hurt, not confused. Exhausting. Like loving me was a burden he deserved credit for carrying. I should have told him to get out right then. Instead, because I was still hooked on fixing things he broke, I said, then leave. He stared at me for a second, like he didn't think I'd actually say it. Then he smirked and sat back down on my bed. No. I felt something in me snap into a colder shape. Get out, Tyler. He leaned back on his elbows like it was funny. You're cute when you try to act tough. I hated him in that moment. Not in some dramatic movie way, in this specific, intimate way that happens when someone knows exactly how to humiliate you and does it with a straight face. I walked over, grabbed the hoodie he'd tossed on my desk chair, and threw it at his chest. Take your stuff and go. He stood up so fast the mattress squealed. You don't get to talk to me like that. In my room, in my house, yeah, I do. That should have been the end of it. But Tyler was the kind of guy who could never just lose. He had to twist the knife before he left. He stepped in close enough that I could smell the mint gum on his breath and said low and mean, You act like you're so different from your mom. I froze. What did you just say? His eyes flicked over my face, pleased he'd found the target. You hurt me. My throat burned. My mom had married badly once before. She carried that shame around like a hidden limp. Tyler knew that. I told him things in bed, in the dark, when I mistook vulnerability for safety. And now he was using them like ammunition. Get out, I said again, but my voice cracked on the last word. He smiled, actually smiled. Then his phone lit up on my bed. Kelsey. I saw the name. He saw me see it. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then I lunged for the phone and he caught my wrist so hard I yelped. Not enough to leave a bruise right away, but enough to make the room go bright around the edges. Tyler, let go of me. Stop acting crazy. I tried to pull back. He tightened his grip. And that was the exact second my bedroom door flew open. Rick filled the doorway like a storm cloud. Work boots, jeans dusty at the knees, gray t-shirt dark with sweat down the chest, face set in a way I had never seen before. Behind him, the hallway looked blindingly bright. For a second, nobody spoke. Tyler's hand was still around my wrist. My face was wet, and I hadn't even realized I was crying. Rick's voice, when it came, was terrifyingly calm. Take your hand off her. Tyler let go like he'd touched a live wire. This isn't what it looks like. Rick took 1 step into the room. That wasn't a request. I stumbled back against my desk, cradling my wrist to my chest. Tyler straightened up and tried on this fake casual posture that fooled absolutely nobody. We were just arguing. Rick looked at me once, just once, but it was enough. He saw everything. The fear, the humiliation, the phone on the bed, Tyler's expression, the whole ugly scene. Then he looked back at Tyler. You've got 5 seconds to get out of this house before I drag you out by your throat. Tyler puffed up because that was his instinct whenever another man was in the room. You can't talk to me like that. Rick didn't even raise his voice. 1. I had never seen Tyler scared before, but I saw it then. It flashed across his face so fast I almost missed it. He grabbed his hoodie off the floor and pointed at me like I was somehow the problem. She's insane. You have no idea what she's been doing. Rick took another step. 2. Tyler backed toward the door. This whole family is messed up. 3. He walked out still talking, still trying to salvage some version of power by leaving words behind like broken glass.
I heard him stomping down the hallway, then the stairs, then the front door slamming so hard the house shook. And then it was just me and Rick in my room. The silence after a fight is always worse than the fight. Everything looks too normal. The lamp is still on. The sheets are still twisted. Half a sandwich sits on a plate like a joke. My wrist throbbed when Tyler had grabbed it. I couldn't stop shaking. Rick didn't come closer right away. He stood by the door like he didn't want to crowd me. "You okay?" That question broke me harder than Tyler had. I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Not graceful crying. Not movie crying. Ugly, choking, bent-over crying that made my ribs ache. Rick swore under his breath, crossed the room, and moved the desk chair behind me so I could sit. Then he went into the bathroom, came back with a washcloth, and handed it to me without saying anything. I pressed it to my face. "Why are you home?" "Rain delay. Crew got sent off the roof." He looked at my wrist. "Did he hurt you?" I shook my head too fast, then nodded, then shook it again. Rick crouched down in front of me, elbows on his knees, voice low. "Listen to me carefully. If he put his hands on you, I need the truth." I stared at the carpet and whispered. "He grabbed me. How often?" The shame of that question nearly swallowed me whole. I didn't answer. He exhaled through his nose and leaned back a little, like he already had his answer. There was no triumph in his face. "No, I told you so." None of that. Just anger. Controlled, adult anger. The kind that didn't need to shout to fill a room. "I'm gonna ask you something," he said. "And I want you to be smarter than you've been with him." I almost laughed at that, except I was too wrecked to do anything but stare. "Is there another girl?" My whole body went still. I don't know why that was the question that got me. Maybe because it was the one I'd been dodging for months. Maybe because hearing it out loud made it real in a way suspicion never does. I looked at Tyler's phone notifications still glowing faintly in my memory, at the blonde hair and the hoodie collar, at the missed calls, the late nights, the lies folded inside other lies. And I said, "Yeah, I think there's more than one." Rick stood up slowly, jaw tight, and looked toward the hallway where Tyler had just disappeared. "Then this isn't over." I looked up at him, tears still sliding down my face. And for the first time all summer, maybe all year, I felt something colder and cleaner than heartbreak. I felt the beginning of the truth. I didn't sleep that night.
I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, turning lazy circles through the dark, listening to the house settle around me, replaying every second from that afternoon, until the memories started to feel less like something that had happened and more like a movie someone was forcing my eyes open to watch. Every time I got close to drifting off, I felt Tyler's hand on my wrist again. Then I heard Rick's voice from the doorway. "Take your hand off her." Calm, flat, deadly. It kept looping in my head, and somehow both parts of it unsettled me. Tyler grabbing me made me feel humiliated. Rick seeing it made me feel exposed. That was the worst part of being 19. You think you're grown until somebody walks in on the exact moment you realize you're not in control of your own life. My mom got home around 6 that evening, and I heard their voices downstairs before I heard my name. Not loud, not a fight, just that low, urgent tone adults use when something serious has happened and they're trying not to make it bigger before they understand it. I stayed in my room for almost 20 minutes after her car pulled in because I couldn't bear the thought of explaining any of it. Not Tyler, not the other girl, not the way I'd kept defending him while he slowly turned me into a smaller, shakier version of myself. Eventually, my mom came up and knocked once before opening the door. She was still in her scrubs, blonde hair half fallen out of the clip at the back of her head, eyes already carrying that exhausted worry mothers have before they even know the details. She sat beside me on the bed and touched my wrist gently. "Let me see." "It's fine," I said. She gave me that look. Not angry, not soft either, just direct. I showed her. A faint red mark had come up along the inside of my wrist where Tyler had squeezed me. It wasn't dramatic. If you didn't know what happened, you could have missed it. But my mom saw it and went very still. "He did that?" I nodded. She looked toward the bedroom door like she could see through the walls to where Rick was downstairs. "He told me Tyler put his hands on you." The fact that Rick had said it plainly to her made my stomach twist. There was something humiliating about hearing my mess repeated in another person's voice, even when it was true. My mom brushed hair off my forehead. "Honey, why didn't you tell me things were this bad?" That question should have been easy to answer, but it wasn't. Because it wasn't one reason, it was a pile of reasons. Because I loved him, because I was embarrassed, because admitting how bad it was would mean admitting I'd ignored every warning sign. Because once you start making excuses for someone, the excuses start making a home inside you. "I thought I could handle it," I said finally. She closed her eyes for a second like that hurt her physically. "That's not handling it." I almost snapped back, but I was too wrung out. Instead, I asked the question that had been building under everything else.
Did Rick say anything else? She hesitated just enough for me to notice. About what? About Tyler. She studied my face. He said he never trusted him. That tracked. It was practically the least surprising thing in the world, but there was something in her voice that made me push. What else? She sighed. He said he thinks Tyler's been cheating on you. The room seemed to tilt, not because I didn't know, but because hearing adults say it out loud made it official. Real. Ugly. I picked at a loose thread in my blanket and stared down at it so I didn't have to see pity in her eyes. Then she said, Rick wants you to stay away from him. I let out a hollow little laugh. Rick wants? My mom's face changed. Don't do that. Do what? That tone. He was trying to protect you. That irritated me instantly, mostly because she was right and I still didn't want to hear it. I don't need him acting like some hero. No, she said quietly. You needed a boyfriend who didn't lie to you and grab you in my house. Since that didn't happen, I'm grateful somebody walked in. That shut me up. After she left, I sat there with my phone in my hand for almost an hour, staring at Tyler's name. He texted twice and storming out. You embarrassed me in front of him. You really blew this up for no reason. No apology, no are you okay, no shame. Just anger that I'd exposed him to another man. That's when it clicked for me, maybe for the first time in a way I couldn't soften or reinterpret. Tyler wasn't upset he hurt me. He was upset he got caught. I didn't answer. Around midnight, another text came through from a number I didn't recognize. So are you his daughter or his little sidekick? I sat upright so fast the blanket fell off me. Then another one. Kelsey says he acts real protective for a stepdad. My whole body went cold. I read the messages 5 times, then a 6th. The room felt suddenly too small, too hot, too close. I checked the number again. Unknown, local. I didn't recognize it. My chest started pounding for a whole new reason now, because the words didn't even make sense. They were ugly in a sloppy, taunting way, but underneath that there was this insinuation that made my skin crawl. I walked downstairs barefoot, carrying my phone like it might explode in my hand. Rick was at the kitchen table with a legal pad and his reading glasses low on his nose, looking over some estimate sheets for work. My mom had already gone to bed. He looked up when I came in, and whatever he saw in my face made him set the papers down immediately. What? I handed him the phone. He read the messages once, expression unreadable, then again slower. A muscle in his jaw ticked. Who sent this? I don't know. He looked at me. Has Tyler ever said anything like this before? No. My voice sounded thin even to me. Not exactly. Exactly? I wrapped my arms around myself. He's made comments, like weird comments sometimes, about how you're always around, or how you watch everything. Just stupid stuff. Rick's eyes hardened in a way that made him look older and more dangerous at the same time. And you never thought that mattered? I thought he was just trying to get under my skin. He was. That answer came too fast, too certain. I swallowed. What does this even mean? Rick stood up and took off his glasses. It means he's trying to poison the room, because that's all he's got left. That should have calmed me down. It didn't. Because if Tyler was desperate enough to start throwing around ugly suggestions, what else had he been saying? To other girls, to his friends, to people in town? And why bring Kelsey into it? My face burned at the thought of some stranger talking about my family like we were entertainment. Rick gave the phone back. Block the number. What if it's really her? Then block her too. I looked at him, really looked at him, and there was something in his expression I couldn't place. Anger, obviously, but beneath that, something else. Not guilt, not fear exactly, more like recognition, like Tyler had reached for a weapon Rick understood too well. Did Tyler ever say anything to you? I asked. Rick leaned one hand on the back of the kitchen chair. Couple times. What kind of things? He paused. Disrespectful things. That answer felt evasive. Like what? His eyes met mine, like he thought he knew what kind of man I was. I frowned. What does that mean? It means he runs his mouth.
Normally, I would have kept pushing, but there was a wall in his tone that told me I wasn't getting through it that night. He nodded toward the stairs. Go to bed. I'm not tired. You still need sleep. I hated when he got like that, like he could flatten a conversation just by deciding it was over. But I was too shaken to fight him. I went back upstairs, blocked the number, blocked Tyler, blocked Kelsey, even though I'd never spoken to her in my life, and lay awake till dawn anyway. The next morning, I did something I should have done months earlier. I went through everything. Every text thread, every tagged photo, every Instagram follow, every like, every little digital breadcrumb I'd been pretending not to see because I was scared of where it led. Once I stopped trying to protect Tyler from the truth was everywhere. There was Kelsey, obviously, with comments under his posts going back 3 months. Little inside jokes, flirty nonsense, a photo at some lake party where his arm was visible around a waist that definitely wasn't mine. There was another girl named Bree who'd posted a blurry story from a country bar in March, Tyler in the background wearing the exact shirt he'd told me he had on during Guys' Night. There was a Venmo transaction to a woman named Amanda with a martini emoji beside it from the same weekend he'd claimed he was helping his uncle move a couch. Every new piece of evidence didn't feel like discovery, it felt like confirmation of something my body had already been bracing for. By noon, grief had turned into fury. I drove to my friend Lauren's apartment because I couldn't stand being in my room another second. Lauren had known me since junior year, knew Tyler too, and had always hated him with a clarity I used to call judgmental and now recognized as intelligence. She opened the door in an oversized Ohio State sweatshirt, took one look at my face, and said, "Finally?" That made me laugh and cry at the same time. We sat on her couch with iced coffees sweating rings onto her cheap coffee cable while I showed her everything. The posts, the texts, the anonymous number. Her mouth got tighter and tighter the more she scrolled. "I swear to God," she said, handing me back the phone, "I would set his truck on fire." "Please don't, he'd somehow make me pay for it." Lauren snorted. "True." Then she got serious. "What about that text about Rick?" I looked away. "I don't know." "You don't believe that, right?" The answer should have been instant. It mostly was. But there was a weird little hesitation in me, and I hated myself for it. Not because I believed Tyler exactly, but because once someone drops something disgusting into your mind, it leaves a stain. Even if you know better, even if it's ridiculous, even if it says more about them than anyone else. Lauren saw the hesitation and sat forward. "Hey, no, don't do that to yourself." "I'm not." "You are." I rubbed my forehead. "It's just, he said Kelsey said it. Like they were talking about me. About my family." Lauren's face twisted. "That's because cheaters always go dirty when they're cornered. He needs you confused. He needs you embarrassed. It keeps you from focusing on what he did." I knew she was right, but I also knew something she didn't. Tyler had made offhand comments before. Once, after Rick fixed the brakes on my car, Tyler had said, "Man, he really goes above and beyond for you." He'd smiled when he said it, but there was acid underneath. Another time, when Rick knocked on my bedroom door before Tyler and I could leave for dinner, Tyler said, "He checks on you like you're still 12. At the time, I thought he was just jealous of authority, allergic to men he couldn't charm. Now, those moments were rearranging themselves in my head into something uglier. Lauren told me to stay at her place that night. I almost did, but around 4, my mom called asking where I was, and I could hear strain in her voice. Not panic, not exactly. More like she had been carrying tension all day and was trying not to pass it on through the phone. "Is everything okay?" I asked. A beat of silence. Tyler came by. I was already standing. "What?" He didn't come in. Rick handled it. Ice flooded my bloodstream. "Handled it how?" He told him to leave. "That's not enough information, Mom." He left. I grabbed my keys so hard they bit into my palm. Lauren was already mouthing what happened and reaching for her shoes. By the time I got home, Tyler was gone. Rick was in the driveway near the garage, shirt damp with sweat, replacing a cracked sprinkler head like this was the most ordinary Saturday in the world. My mom hovered near the front door with her arms folded tight. I got out of my car and slammed the door harder than I meant to. "He came here?" Rick didn't look up right away. He finished twisting something into place, then stood and wiped his hands on a rag. "Yeah. What did he want?" He met my eyes. "You." My stomach turned. "Did he say that?" "He said he needed to talk to you." And I told him no. There was something about the plainness of that answer that made my pulse spike. "You don't get to decide that for me." Rick's face changed by maybe half an inch. "He showed up uninvited after grabbing you yesterday and sending filth to your phone last night?" "Yeah, I do." I opened my mouth and then closed it again, because part of me knew he was right, but another part of me was furious at being handled. My mom stepped in softly. "He was angry." "I don't care if he was angry," I said. "What else did he say?" Nobody answered fast enough. I looked from her to Rick. "What did he say?" Rick tossed the rag onto the workbench just inside the garage. "Nothing worth repeating." "Then repeat it." He stared at me for a long second, and I could feel something shifting under the surface of this whole thing, like all of us were standing on a floor that had started to crack. "He said I was too invested in your life," Rick said at last. "He said I liked controlling who came in and out of your room." My skin prickled. "That's it?" "No," he said. The air between us went tight. "He also said," Rick continued, voice flat, "that maybe I should worry less about him in your room and more about who was in your mother's." My mom went white. I turned to her so fast it hurt my neck. "What?" She looked like somebody had slapped her. "It's not true." I believed her immediately. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that Tyler had said it at all.
He hadn't just come by to beg or manipulate. He had come to detonate something. I looked back at Rick. Why would he say that? And for the first time since the door flew open in my room, Rick didn't have an answer ready. The second Rick didn't answer me, something shifted in a way I can't fully explain. It wasn't just the silence. It was the kind of silence that feels like it's holding something back, like there's more behind it than what's being said. I stood there in the driveway, the heat pressing down, cicadas screaming from the trees, my heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with Tyler anymore. Why would he say that? I asked again, slower this time. Rick dragged a hand across the back of his neck, eyes flicking briefly toward my mom before settling back on me. Because he's trying to get a reaction. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. It wasn't. Not to me.
My mom stepped forward, voice tight. Honey, Tyler's angry. He's lashing out. People say things when they're desperate. About you? I asked her. About you cheating? Her face crumpled just a little before she pulled it back together. I have never. She stopped, took a breath. I've never done that. Not to Rick, not to anyone. I believed her. That wasn't the part that felt wrong. The part that felt wrong was how fast everything was unraveling, like Tyler had walked into our lives with a box of matches, and now every room felt like it might catch. I looked at Rick again. What else did he say? Rick's jaw tightened. Enough. Enough what? Enough for me to know he's not coming back here again. That's not your call. It is when he shows up here running his mouth about my family. My family too, I snapped. We stared at each other, and for a split second, it felt like we weren't even talking about Tyler anymore. It felt bigger than that, older. Lauren's car pulled up behind mine, gravel crunching, breaking the tension just enough for me to breathe. She stepped out, took one look at all of us standing there like a scene frozen mid-argument, and immediately knew this wasn't just about some cheating boyfriend anymore. What happened? She asked, coming up beside me. Tyler came here, I said. Her eyes narrowed. And apparently he decided to audition for most unhinged person alive. Rick exhaled like he was done with the entire conversation. I told him to leave, he left. That's the end of it. No, I said quietly, it's not. Because it wasn't. I could feel it in my chest, in that tight, uneasy place that had been growing since the text messages the night before. Tyler wasn't just trying to hurt me anymore. He was trying to mess with everything around me. And I didn't know why. The rest of that afternoon moved in this weird, strained slow motion. My mom went inside and started cleaning like she always did when she was anxious, wiping down already clean counters, reorganizing drawers that didn't need organizing. Rick stayed outside longer than necessary, moving tools around, checking things that didn't need checking. Lauren and I ended up in my room, the same room where everything had blown up the day before, sitting on opposite sides of the bed like we were trying to keep the space balanced. This is getting weird, she said finally. It already was weird. No, I mean like next level weird. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Cheating, lying, grabbing you, that's all standard garbage behavior. But this? She gestured vaguely, like she could point at the tension in the air. This feels targeted. I knew what she meant, even if I didn't want to say it out loud. He's trying to mess with my family, I said. Yeah, but why your mom? Why Rick? I swallowed. I don't know. But again, that wasn't entirely true. There was a piece of something forming in my mind, something I didn't like, something I didn't fully understand yet. Tyler had always had this weird edge when it came to Rick. Not fear exactly, not respect. Something else, something sharper. Lauren studied my face. You're thinking something. I'm trying not to. That's never stopped you before. I let out a shaky breath. He's made comments about Rick before all this. Like what? Just stuff. About how he watches everything. About how he acts like he owns the place. About how he's always around me. Lauren frowned. That sounds like insecurity. Yeah, but it didn't feel like just that. She tilted her head. What do you mean? I hesitated, then said it anyway. It felt like he was testing something. Lauren's expression shifted. Testing what? I don't know. And that was the problem. I didn't know. But the feeling wouldn't go away. That night, dinner was quiet in a way that felt unnatural for our house. Usually, my mom filled silence with small talk, asking about my classes, Rick's work, anything to keep things moving.
But that night, it was like nobody trusted themselves to speak too much. Every word felt like it might lead somewhere none of us were ready to go. About halfway through, Rick set his fork down and looked at me. "Did he ever come by when we weren't here?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "Tyler?" "Yeah. Sometimes," I said, "during the day." Rick nodded slowly, like he was confirming something to himself. "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I want to know how comfortable he felt in this house." The way he said it made my skin prickle. "Too comfortable," I said. Rick's eyes flicked up to mine. That's what I was afraid of. Something about that phrasing stuck with me. Afraid of. Not annoyed by, not suspicious of. Afraid of. "For me?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze for a second, then said yeah. I wanted to believe that was the whole answer, I really did, but there was still that tension underneath, like we were all pretending we were talking about one thing when we were actually circling another. After dinner, I went back to my room and locked the door for the first time in years. Not because I was scared of Rick, not because I thought Tyler would somehow show up again, but because everything felt unstable, and locking the door was the only small piece of control I could grab. I sat on my bed, phone in hand, scrolling through Tyler's social media again, even though I'd already seen everything. It was like picking at a wound just to prove it still hurt. That's when I noticed something I'd missed earlier. A tagged photo from 2 nights ago. I clicked it. It was dark, grainy, taken at some bar I recognized from downtown. Tyler was in the corner of the frame, half turned away from the camera, talking to someone. Not Kelsey, not Bree. Someone else. Someone older. The woman had her hand on his arm, leaning in close, laughing at something he said. She looked late 30s, maybe early 40s, blonde, polished, the kind of woman who knew exactly how she looked and used it. There was something about the familiarity in her posture that made my stomach twist. I zoomed in. Tyler looked comfortable, not flirty, not trying, just at ease, like this wasn't new. My heart started racing for a completely different reason now. I clicked on the tag. Her name was Dana Whitmore. I'd never heard it before. But as I scrolled through her profile, something started clicking into place in a way that made me feel physically sick. She lived in our area. She followed Tyler. And then I saw it. A photo from a month ago. A backyard. A grill. A patio I recognized immediately. My patio. I dropped my phone like it burned me. No. No way. I grabbed it again, hand shaking, and stared at the photo. It was definitely our house. The angle was slightly different, like it had been taken from the side yard instead of the back door, but there was no mistaking the layout, the fence, the deck, even the stupid wind chime my mom loved. The caption was simple. Summer nights. No tag of me. No tag of my mom. No tag of Rick. Just that. I couldn't breathe. Because I knew one thing for sure. That night hadn't been a night Tyler was supposed to be at my house. I flew downstairs so fast I nearly slipped on the last step. Rick was in the living room, flipping through channels. My mom was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes. "Who is Dana Whitmore?" I demanded. Both of them froze. And that's when everything really started to fall apart.